11-year-old Morgan Geyser has always had a vivid imagination.
Morgan loved horror stories and scary things. She had a huge imagination. And not only did she feel at home where people were exercising imagination, but she felt like she was a part of it.
She liked stories and fantasy-based situations, which was not necessarily like the other kids at her age range.
Morgan wasn't a very popular girl. She was a little odd, she was a little different, and it didn't bother her at all.
But when she begins middle school, everything changes.
Because Morgan is a little different and a bit quirky, other kids sometimes picked on her. She was bullied.
At age 11, Morgan is extremely immature compared to her peers, to the point where she still believes in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny.
Morgan's sense of reality was incredibly skewed. For an 11-year-old to still believe in the Easter Bunny, that is a life-sized rabbit who walks upright on its hind legs and goes into people's houses at night. For Morgan to believe that the Easter Bunny exists at age 11 is a skewed dynamic in her perception of reality.
Morgan claims to see creatures all around her. Kevin Osborne of the Waukesha County District Attorney's Office reflects on his encounters with Morgan.
Morgan reported having delusions, conversations with Harry Potter characters, with Voldemort, with Professor Snape.
It isn't just kind of a whimsical belief. She was adamant that these characters existed in her reality.
Morgan doesn't tell her fellow classmates about her visions.
Oh, cute drawing.
And despite the bullying at school, she likes living in her imaginary world.
I think the way that the bullying affected Morgan is it drew her more and more into the fantasy world.
Luckily, Morgan isn't entirely alone at school. She has two friends named Bella and Anissa.
Peyton Leitner was an 11-year-old girl, but most people called her Bella. Bella and Morgan met in kindergarten, and they became best friends in 4th grade.
Is this your cat?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Bella and Morgan were both smart, both had a mutual love for animals. Bella was a bit more popular than Morgan was in school. She was well-liked, and nobody made fun of her.
It's a really big cat.
Bella really embraced Morgan. She had known Morgan almost all her life, so there must have been a comfort level in itself.
Oh, thank you.
And then there's Morgan's new best friend, 12-year-old Anissa Wire.
Anissa and Morgan met on the school bus, and they started finding more and more they had in common. Both of the girls had been bullied in school. It bothered Anissa a lot. She cried about it quite often. And so it was something that bonded them both together, sort of me and you against the world.
They didn't have a lot of friends. And that's one of the reasons they clung to each other.
But while Morgan uses her imagination to tune out the bullies, Anissa's escape is the internet.
Anissa and Morgan were similar because they both had a love for the dark side. They enjoyed tales of horror and fantasy. The scarier, the better.
And that's when Anissa comes across something that catches her eye. It's the story of Slenderman, an image created for fun on an internet forum.
The Slenderman was a fictional character created in 2009. The original modus operandi for the Slenderman is that he abducted children, or that children, in the very least, disappeared after he was present.
But what started as a fictitious character has morphed into an online phenomenon.
Everybody immediately jumped on that and started making their own version of the Slender Man because it was just such an exciting idea to create a supernatural villain.
As the image of Slenderman goes viral, thousands of users create their own online news, photos, websites, and videos, adding to his lore. Some even try to prove he really does exist.
I first heard about it on YouTube. I watched the whole video and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Slenderman is made to seem as if it is real. It is all about simulating the appearance of the myth being based on reality.
Have you heard of Slenderman?
Who?
By the time the girls got involved with the Slender Man, he was already pre-established, and there were so many different pockets of the internet talking about him in so many different ways.
He can make his appearance change depending on who's looking at him.
And that must have made him seem overwhelmingly real.
The legend of Slenderman instantly grabs Anissa's attention.
He could be anywhere from 6 feet to 14 feet tall. He constantly wears a suit. He doesn't have a face. His skin is white. And at his own will, he can exploit these tendrils from his back and strangle his victim.
But for Anissa, Slenderman represents so much more. Something she struggles with on a daily basis.
There are a lot of different versions of the Slender Man story, and some of them have him being bullied and being the output of a bullied relationship.
I think what was most appealing about it was that he was accepting of people that aren't what we would call normal. If you don't consider yourself normal, Slender Man will be your buddy.
Anissa is fascinated by the legend of Slenderman and knows her best friend Morgan will be too.
She thought it was really very cool. So she hooked Morgan up with the Slenderman image and with the stories about him.
Tragically for Morgan, she was very susceptible and very open to what Anissa told her.
Who tells you about him?
He's everywhere.
How do you know that?
Because I've read so many things about him.
Morgan easily latches on to the legend of Slenderman, and soon it's all she and Anissa can talk about.
She said, "Oh my God, I think I saw Slender when I was like 5."
Morgan told her, I saw Slenderman.
It has to be real.
That cemented it in Anissa's mind that Slenderman was an actual real being.
Do you think he can talk? I mean, he doesn't have a face.
I've heard he communicates in a different way.
But the group's third member, Bella, is not convinced.
You've got Morgan and Anissa believing in Slender Man, talking about Slender Man, sharing stories about Slender Man.
It's a dumb internet story.
It was such a central part of Morgan and Anissa's friendship, and Bella really wasn't buying into it.
Three's a crowd, and while their obsession with Slenderman strengthens the bond between Morgan and Anissa, Bella is pushed to the side.
I think it was difficult for Bella. They're pulling away from her because they so desperately want to believe in this horror fantasy.
But the closer Anissa and Morgan get to Slenderman, the closer they come to murder.
He was my only friend for a long time. Because
Why would you hurt your only friend?
it was necessary.
Middle school friends Morgan Geyser and Anissa Wire are quickly becoming obsessed with the popular internet story Slenderman.
There's this website called the Creppypasta Wiki. Okay. It's full of horror stories that are meant to purposely scare you. Okay. And there's one of them called Slenderman.
Tall, slender, pale skin, and most distinguishedly, it's often portrayed without any facial features.
Slenderman is the boogeyman of today's youth with an ever-evolving storyline, thanks to the internet.